So what are some common myths about what it takes to become a CEO?
Well, gosh, so we all imagine, if you say the word CEO, right, we all imagine this, charismatic, larger-than-life personality who makes brilliant decisions, often male, often 6 foot tall. There's lots of research about how important it is to be good-looking and male and tall. The problem with all of those things is that you can't really do anything to affect them. What made us really excited in the research is what we uncovered is actually behaviors that you can master is what really sets apart the successful CEO. So it's not so much what you were born with, it's really things that you've learned and practiced and applied throughout your career. And as we dug into the research, a lot of myths went out the door. So for example, you might imagine that these CEOs were all destined for greatness. We all know these friends we had who from kindergarten were the first person on the board and they were the leader of the class. And we assume these are the people who are voted the most likely to succeed, right? Well, when we look at CEOs who have been very successful, only 70% of them actually didn't know until much later in life that they wanted to even be a CEO. And so what's really interesting is, if you talk to your friends or if you talk to a common person out there, they'll say, well, CEO, it's just something that's completely irrelevant and accessible to me. The reality is you actually don't know, right? And so 70% of the CEOs you see on Squawk Box and in the media today, 70% of them didn't know until they got really within the strike zone of the opportunity that they even aspired to that. But what they did do is they applied these 4 behaviors that we talk about, and they've mastered them along the way. So that was just one example. Another example that's very common, and unfortunately still, what's dangerous about the stereotypes of CEOs is that they're not only kind of colloquial stereotypes, but they also affect who actually gets the roles, and they also affect what we believe we can aspire to. And so one of those stereotypes is how important it is to be an extroverted, charismatic leader, right? And the number of times in the most sophisticated boards, when we're discussing a CEO candidate and comparing and contrasting, inevitably somebody on the board will say, I'm just a little concerned because they seem really introverted. Well, the data shows it actually doesn't matter. Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert actually doesn't significantly affect your probability of success. In fact, in our data set, introverts were slightly more likely to exceed expectations. So if we bucket CEOs into meets, doesn't meet expectations, and exceeds, in the exceeds buckets, there were even slightly more introverts. But the main message is, again, it's not about what you're born with or your innate makeup. It's about practicing the behaviors that are never too early, never too late to learn and master.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that kind of really answers the question of, are leaders born or are they made?
Exactly. When we look up close and personal at successful CEOs, we find that there are a lot of ways you can self-make. The other area is, I think often many of us are inclined to feel that we don't measure up in some way, that we don't quite have the pedigree. Well, we were shocked because we looked at, and we all know, obviously pedigree does help, right? If you went to a school with a great name, you got access to resources, and you do have great opportunities. But we actually found in our data set, only about 7% of CEOs got an Ivy League undergraduate education. On the other hand, 8% of CEOs didn't graduate from college, right? And so there's a way to advance, and there's an opportunity to advance, regardless of the pedigree.